The sun was barely up when whispers started racing through social media feeds like wildfire. But by noon the rumor had exploded. Jasmine and Kirk had slipped away to a private Caribbean island for a secret getaway. And they were not alone. Fans were shocked to see grainy paparazzi photos of the two arriving by speedboat, sunglasses on and smiles that hinted at something more than a casual vacation. For weeks, the couple had been the center of quiet speculation. But no one expected their escape to spark a storm that would pull the entire love and hip-hop circle into chaos. What began as a romantic retreat quickly turned into the most talked-about showdown of the year, when Rasheeda, tired of the whispers and fed up with the games, booked a last-minute flight and set her sights on the island like a woman on a mission. Eyewitnesses claim they saw Rasheeda storming through the resort lobby just hours after landing. Her phone clutched tight, her expression fierce enough to stop hotel staff in their tracks. Sources say she didn't come for a polite conversation. "This ends tonight," she reportedly told a friend before boarding her plane. A statement that sent fans scrambling for every update. What could drive Rasheeda to cross oceans and confront the couple in person? Did Jasmine and Kirk plan this escape to keep their secrets hidden? Or was the trip a dangerous game to provoke Rasheeda into making her move? As tensions mounted and cameras lurked in the shadows, emotions ran high and the family was left divided before the confrontation even began. Stay with us, because this is one island vacation that's about to erupt into a storm no one saw coming. Under the blazing Caribbean sun, the private island looked like a paradise stolen from a dream. But the air was heavy with tension long before Rasheeda's plane even touched down. Jasmine had arrived with Kirk the night before, their speedboat slicing through the turquoise water as if carrying a secret that could shatter lives. Cameras were nowhere in sight, but a handful of resort staff recognized them instantly and whispered into phones, their voices low but urgent. Inside the glass-walled villa perched above the sand, Jasmine lounged in a flowing white dress, sipping from a tall glass of pineapple juice while Kirk paced the balcony, his sunglasses hiding eyes that kept darting to the ocean as if he expected a storm to rise from the horizon. "Relax, Kirk," Jasmine said, her voice soft but edged with a challenge. "No one even knows we're here." Kirk stopped pacing, lowering his glasses to meet her gaze. "You don't understand," he muttered. "She always finds out." The silence that followed was broken only by the rhythm of waves crashing against the shore, a sound that felt more like a countdown than a lullaby. Back in Atlanta, Rasheeda had already found out. A single photo posted by a resort worker, quickly deleted but captured by fans, showed Kirk's unmistakable profile against a backdrop of palm trees. Within minutes, her phone exploded with messages. Friends called, fans tagged. Even family members demanded to know if the rumors were true. Rasheeda's heart pounded as she scrolled through the evidence, each swipe fueling a fire that had been smoldering for months. "Pack a bag," she told her assistant without hesitation. "Book me the first flight out. I don't care what it costs." Hours later, the roar of jet engines filled the night sky as Rasheeda sat in first class, eyes fixed on nothing, replaying every betrayal, every half-truth, every late-night argument that had led to this moment. On the island, Jasmine and Kirk tried to pretend the world had not found them. They dined on grilled lobster under a canopy of stars, laughing too loudly, their voices tinged with a nervousness neither wanted to name. Kirk raised a toast, his hand trembling slightly. "To us," he said, forcing a smile. Jasmine clinked her glass against his, her eyes sharp with a mix of defiance and desire. "To finally being free," she replied, the words hanging in the humid night like a spark waiting to ignite. Meanwhile, Rasheeda's flight landed just as the sun began to rise. She stepped onto the tarmac in a fitted black jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses, the kind of outfit that said she was ready for war. Paparazzi hadn't been tipped off yet, but a few curious travelers caught the flash of determination in her stride and pulled out their phones. Rasheeda barely noticed. Every step across the small airport felt like a step closer to answers she wasn't sure she wanted. A black SUV waited outside, engine running, driver nervous. "Straight to the resort," she ordered, her voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced any attempt at small talk. Back at the villa, Jasmine woke to the sound of Kirk's phone buzzing on the nightstand. She reached for it out of habit, her eyes narrowing at the flurry of notifications. "They know," she whispered, her stomach twisting. Kirk sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What do you mean they know?" Jasmine turned the screen toward him. A fan account had already posted flight details, claiming Rasheeda was en route. Kirk's face drained of color. "She wouldn't," he said, but his voice betrayed the doubt. "She's coming," Jasmine replied, her tone flat, almost resigned. Outside, the ocean shimmered under the morning sun, deceptively peaceful as the first whispers of confrontation began to ripple through the island like a brewing storm. Rasheeda's SUV sped along narrow coastal roads, tires kicking up clouds of sand. She barely registered the breathtaking scenery: lush palms, flamingo-pink skies, the smell of salt and hibiscus. Her mind replayed the photo of Kirk and Jasmine over and over, each glance a dagger of betrayal. She gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles whitened, scrolling through messages from friends urging her to stay calm. Calm, she muttered under her breath. Not today. At the resort, staff scrambled as word spread that Rasheeda had checked in. A bellhop whispered to a bartender, who whispered to a maid. And soon, every worker on the property knew a confrontation was coming. Guests lingered by windows and poolside cabanas, pretending to sip cocktails while angling their phones for a shot of history in the making. Inside the villa, Jasmine paced the living room while Kirk stood frozen by the balcony door. What are we going to do? Jasmine demanded. Kirk ran a hand through his hair, his voice low. Maybe we should just leave. Jasmine spun on him, eyes blazing. Leave, and let her think she won. No, we stay. We face this. Kirk swallowed hard, torn between fear and guilt. This isn't just about us, he said. This is about everything we've built. The family, the fans, the business. Jasmine's laugh was sharp, bitter. Family. Don't act like that word means anything after what you've done. Before Kirk could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the villa like a gunshot. Jasmine froze. Kirk's eyes met hers, both of them knowing exactly who stood on the other side of that door. The knock came again, harder this time, reverberating through the glass walls as if demanding the truth to be dragged into the open. Kirk's breath caught in his throat, and Jasmine instinctively stepped back, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the sound of the ocean outside. Without a word, Kirk moved toward the door, every step weighted with the knowledge that life as he knew it was about to change. He hesitated, hand on the handle, then pulled it open to reveal Rasheeda standing in the doorway, her sunglasses hiding eyes that burned hotter than the island's sun. Well, she said, her voice icy and deliberate, I see the vacation spot was worth all the lies. The words sliced through the humid air, leaving a silence so thick it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Jasmine crossed her arms, her chin lifting in defiance. This isn't what you think, she began, but Rasheeda cut her off with a sharp laugh. Oh, spare me. I've seen the pictures. I've heard the stories. You think you're clever, but you're sloppy. Both of you? Kirk stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of fragile peace. Rasheeda, listen, don't. She snapped, her voice cracking just enough to betray the hurt beneath the fury. Don't you dare try to spin this. After everything we've been through, after every promise you made, this is how you repay me. Outside the villa, curious guests pressed closer, their phones ready to capture what was quickly becoming the confrontation of the year. A bartender whispered to a waiter, "This is better than reality TV," while a group of tourists pretended to check in just to get a closer look. Inside, Rasheeda stepped past Kirk and entered the villa, her heels clicking against the polished wood floor like a countdown to disaster. So this is your little paradise, she said, glancing around the lavish space, her gaze finally landing on Jasmine. Was it worth it? Sneaking around, humiliating me, embarrassing our family. Jasmine held her ground, but her voice trembled. It's not like that. You don't know everything. Rasheeda's eyes narrowed. Then enlighten me. Kirk moved between them, his voice low but urgent. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place. Rasheeda interrupted. You chose this island, you chose this moment, and now you're going to face me. The tension was unbearable, the kind of charged silence that made even the walls seem to lean in closer. Jasmine's eyes flashed with something between fear and defiance. We didn't come here to hurt you, she said. We came here to figure things out. Rasheeda's laugh was sharp and bitter. Figure things out. By hiding, by sneaking away like cowards while the world watches. Kirk reached for Rasheeda's hand, but she pulled back, her voice rising. You brought me here once, remember? You said this island was where we could escape, where we could rebuild. And now you bring her. Her voice, where we could rebuild. And now you bring her. Her voice cracked again, and for a moment the fury gave way to pain. Jasmine stepped forward, her own voice shaking but firm. This isn't about stealing anyone. It's about facing what's already broken. Rasheeda turned to her, eyes blazing. And who made it broken? Jasmine. Who kept pushing when the boundaries were clear? Jasmine swallowed hard, but didn't look away. You both did. Don't put this all on me. Kirk's shoulders slumped, the weight of his choices settling like stones. She's right, he admitted quietly, but Rasheeda whirled on him before he could continue. Don't you dare try to soften this. You betrayed me. You betrayed us. And you dragged her into it like some twisted trophy. Outside, The crowd grew restless, murmurs rising with every muffled word that escaped through the villa's thin walls. Resort security tried to push guests back, but even they couldn't hide the electricity in the air. Phones flashed as people tried to capture the showdown of the year. Inside, Rasheeda stepped closer to Kirk, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Do you even understand what you've done? The humiliation, the damage to our family, our children, our business. Kirk's eyes filled with regret, but words failed him. Jasmine, sensing the shift, placed a cautious hand on the back of a chair, steadying herself. We didn't plan for this, she said softly. It just happened. Rasheeda spun toward her, her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. Happened? Affairs don't just happen, Jasmine. Choices happen. Lies happen. Betrayal happens. Kirk finally spoke, his voice breaking. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought you could have it all. Rasheeda interrupted, her tone cutting. The wife at home. The mistress on vacation. The perfect image for the fans. Well, guess what? They're watching. They see everything. And they're not fooled. Jasmine flinched at the mention of fans, the reality of their public lives crashing into the private chaos. Outside, comments were already flooding social media, each post more explosive than the last. Hashtags like #Island Showdown and #Team RASHEEDA began trending within minutes, turning a private betrayal into a global spectacle. Inside, Rasheeda's voice softened unexpectedly, the anger giving way to raw pain. I loved you, she said to Kirk, her eyes glistening. I fought for us when everyone told me to walk away, and this is how you repay me. Kirk's voice cracked. I know I don't deserve you. I know I ruined everything. Jasmine looked away, guilt flickering across her face as Rasheeda continued. Do you even care about what this does to our kids? To the people who believed in us? Kirk took a shaky breath. I care. More than you know, but I can't change what's already happened. Rasheeda stood silent for a long moment, the sound of waves crashing outside, filling the void. Finally, she turned toward the door, her voice cold but steady. Then you can stay on this island and figure out what's left of your lies. I'm done. She reached for the handle, but Kirk caught her wrist, desperation in his eyes. Please, don't go. We can fix this. Rasheeda stared at him, her voice low and lethal. You had your chance to fix it. Now you can live with it. She pulled free and stormed out, the door slamming behind her with a force that made the entire villa tremble. Outside, the crowd erupted into gasps and frantic whispers. Cameras flashing as Rasheeda strode past without a glance, her driver scrambling to open the SUV door. Jasmine sank into a chair, her hands trembling, while Kirk stood motionless, the weight of his actions pressing down like the humid island air. The island paradise that once promised escape now felt like a gilded prison, each crashing wave a reminder that the storm was far from over. Rasheeda's SUV sped away from the resort, but the energy she left behind clung to the island like a thundercloud that refused to break. Inside the villa, Jasmine sat frozen, staring at the door as if expecting Rasheeda to burst back in at any second. Kirk leaned against the balcony railing, the sound of the ocean suddenly deafening in the heavy silence. His phone buzzed on the table, vibrating with a flood of messages. Producers, friends, business partners, all demanding answers. He didn't move to pick it up. Jasmine finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She's not coming back, Kirk. He turned slowly, his face pale, his eyes haunted. You don't know her like I do. She'll be back if not for me, then for the kids. She won't let this end like that. Jasmine shook her head, pulling her knees to her chest on the couch. You don't get it. This isn't just about you and her anymore. Everyone's watching. You saw those cameras out there? This is about to blow up bigger than any of us can control. Outside, guests crowded near the pool, their chatter a mix of excitement and disbelief. Resort staff tried to corral them back to their rooms, but curiosity won. Hashtags were already trending worldwide, fan theories spinning across social media like wildfire. Some sided with Rasheeda, praising her strength and vowing support. Others questioned Kirk's motives, while a few defended Jasmine, calling her a victim of a love triangle gone too far. On the winding coastal road, Rasheeda's SUV screeched to a stop near a secluded overlook. She stepped out, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling as she fought to steady herself. The sea stretched endless before her, waves crashing against the jagged rocks below, a violent mirror to the storm raging inside her. She pulled out her phone, ignoring the endless stream of notifications, and dialed a number she knew by heart. Mom, she said when the line connected, her voice breaking for the first time. It's over. I can't do this anymore. Back at the resort, Kirk finally picked up his phone, wincing at the flood of missed calls. One from his business manager, 3 from producers, and dozens from unknown numbers. The show's production team had caught wind of the confrontation and was already scrambling to secure exclusive footage. Kirk muttered a curse and tossed the phone onto the couch. "They're going to turn this into a circus," he said, rubbing his temples. Jasmine watched him, her expression unreadable. "It already is." She stood, moving to the balcony where the ocean shimmered in the late afternoon sun. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice tight. Kirk joined her, his shoulders sagging. "We wait. We deal with the fallout, and we hope she doesn't." He stopped as his phone buzzed again, this time with a call from his eldest child. His face crumpled as he answered, his voice soft but strained. "Hey, buddy. Yeah, I'm okay. I'll explain everything soon." Jasmine turned away, guilt twisting her stomach. "This isn't what I wanted," she said quietly. "I didn't come here to destroy a family." Kirk sighed, leaning against the railing. "Neither did I, but here we are." Far away on the overlook, Rasheeda wiped her eyes and took a deep breath, her mother's soothing voice grounding her in a way nothing else could. "You don't have to decide everything tonight," her mother said. "Come home. We'll figure it out together." Rasheeda nodded, though no one could see her. "I just don't know if there's anything left to figure out," she whispered. Night began to fall, casting the island in shades of purple and gold. Back at the resort, the crowd slowly dispersed, but the buzz of gossip lingered like static in the humid air. Kirk and Jasmine remained on the balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Neither speaking, both lost in thoughts of what the next day might bring. Their phones continued to light up with calls from producers offering deals, friends begging for explanations, and fans demanding the truth. Kirk finally broke the silence. "Tomorrow, they'll all want statements. They'll want us to choose sides." Jasmine looked at him, her eyes tired. "And what side are you on?" He hesitated, staring at the endless stretch of ocean. "I don't know anymore." In the distance, the faint sound of another plane echoed through the night sky, carrying Rasheeda back to the mainland door, so everyone believed. But in a twist no one saw coming, Rasheeda wasn't done. After hanging up with her mother, she had instructed her driver to circle back toward the resort. "I left too fast," she told herself, her jaw set with a new resolve. They don't get the last word. The SUV sped through the darkening roads, headlights cutting through the thick island night, as Rasheeda prepared for a second confrontation that would make the first look like a warm-up. Back at the villa, Kirk and Jasmine remained unaware of the storm returning to their doorstep. They poured glasses of wine, trying to drown the anxiety that buzzed louder than the cicadas outside. Jasmine tried to smile, but her eyes betrayed her fear. "Maybe she'll calm down," she said, though even she didn't believe it. Kirk shook his head, his voice low. "Rasheeda doesn't calm down. Not when it comes to family. Not when it comes to me." As the clock neared midnight, the sound of approaching tires on gravel broke the uneasy quiet. Kirk froze, his glass halfway to his lips. Jasmine's eyes widened as headlights flashed across the villa walls. "Is that?" she began, but Kirk was already moving toward the door, his heart pounding. Outside, Rasheeda stepped out of the SUV, her posture straight, her face unreadable in the moonlight. She had returned, not with fury this time, but with something far more dangerous, a plan. The moonlight glazed the villa in a silver glow as Rasheeda walked across the gravel path, each step deliberate, each breath measured. Gone was the fiery storm that had first erupted through the glass doors earlier that day. What replaced it was a quiet, unnerving composure that carried more weight than anger ever could. Inside, Kirk froze halfway to the door, his instincts screaming to move but his body locked in a paralysis of dread. Jasmine, standing behind him, tightened her grip on the wineglass until her knuckles turned white. The soft crunch of Rasheeda's heels against the stone grew louder, closer, until a single knock echoed through the villa like the strike of a gavel. Kirk finally moved, swallowing hard before opening the door. Rasheeda stood there, her eyes hidden behind the same oversized sunglasses despite the night sky, her face a mask of calm that felt far more dangerous than the fury she'd shown before. "We need to talk," she said simply. Kirk hesitated, his voice barely audible. "Rasheeda, it's late." "Then this won't take long," she replied, stepping past him before he could protest. Jasmine set her glass down with a shaky clink, forcing herself to meet Rasheeda's gaze. "You came back," Jasmine said, her tone more question than statement. "Of course I came back," Rasheeda answered, her voice steady. "I don't run from messes. I clean them up." The air thickened as Rasheeda took a seat at the dining table, motioning for them to join her. "Sit," she commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. Kirk obeyed, sliding into the chair opposite her, while Jasmine hovered at the edge before finally sitting down. The only sounds were the distant crash of waves and the slow, rhythmic ticking of the villa's ornate wall clock. "You think this is just about betrayal?" Rasheeda began, her voice low but sharp enough to slice through the tension. "But this is bigger than the three of us. We've built a brand, a family, a legacy that fans believe in. And tonight, you jeopardized all of it for a fling on a pretty island." Kirk opened his mouth to speak, but Rasheeda held up a hand, silencing him. "Don't bother with excuses. I've heard them all before. What I want is the truth, and I want it now. How long has this been going on?" Jasmine's lips parted, but she caught herself, glancing at Kirk for guidance. Rasheeda noticed the hesitation and leaned forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Don't look at him. I asked you." Jasmine inhaled sharply. "Months," she admitted, her voice trembling. "It started months ago. We tried to stop, but you didn't." Rasheeda cut in, her tone flat, her eyes unreadable behind the dark lenses. "You kept going. You kept lying. And you thought an island getaway would hide it from the world." Kirk finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought if we got away, we could figure things out without the cameras, without the pressure." Rasheeda let out a bitter laugh. "Without the cameras, you forget who we are. Cameras follow us even when we're running. And now, every fan, every follower, every sponsor is watching this disaster in real time." Her phone buzzed on the table, lighting up with notifications. Without breaking eye contact, she flipped it over to silence the flood of messages. "Our kids are seeing this," she continued, her voice softening for the first time. "Do you even understand what that means? They'll have to live with this headline long after the hashtags stop trending." Jasmine lowered her eyes, guilt washing over her. "I never wanted to hurt them," she whispered. "But you did," Rasheeda shot back. "Both of you did." The silence that followed was suffocating. Outside, a breeze rustled the palm trees, carrying with it the distant sound of music from a beachside bar, a cruel reminder of the paradise surrounding their personal hell. Finally, Rasheeda straightened in her chair, her composure chilling in its precision. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "Tomorrow morning, we're issuing a statement. We control the narrative before the tabloids twist it into something worse. Kirk, you'll take responsibility. Jasmine, you'll step back from the spotlight. And I'll decide where we stand when I've had time to think." Kirk frowned, desperation flickering across his face. "Rasheeda, please, don't let producers turn this into a storyline. We can handle this privately." "Privately," Rasheeda repeated with a sharp edge. "That luxury vanished the moment you booked a flight to this island. The fans are already dissecting every move. The only control we have left is the story we tell." Jasmine clenched her fists, her voice trembling but defiant. "And what about us? Do we get a say in this? Or are we just characters in the show you're writing?" Rasheeda turned to her slowly, removing her sunglasses to reveal eyes blazing with a fire that burned deeper than rage. "You had your say the moment you stepped into this mess. Now you deal with the consequences." Jasmine recoiled under the intensity of her stare, the reality of Rasheeda's power settling like a weight she couldn't shake. Kirk reached across the table, his voice pleading. "Can't we just—" "No," Rasheeda interrupted. "You don't get to negotiate after the betrayal. You listen, you comply, you fix what you broke." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the relentless ticking of the clock, marking each second of a night that felt endless. Finally, Rasheeda stood, her presence commanding the room even as she prepared to leave. "Get some rest," she said coldly. "Tomorrow, we face the world." Without another glance, she turned and walked to the door, her heels clicking with the finality of a judge delivering a sentence. Kirk slumped in his chair, the weight of her words pressing down like a tidal wave. Jasmine stared after Rasheeda, her mind racing with questions and fears. Outside, the night air was thick and heavy, carrying the scent of salt and impending rain. Rasheeda stepped into the darkness, the door closing behind her with a soft but decisive thud. Alone in the villa, Kirk and Jasmine sat in silence, the reality of their situation settling in like an anchor dragging them into deep, uncharted waters. Neither spoke, neither moved. They both knew the next sunrise would bring not peace, but the full force of a world ready to devour their secrets. The night dragged on like a slow-burning fuse, every tick of the clock carrying the weight of unspoken threats and fragile alliances. The production crew had sealed the outer corridors to prevent anyone from slipping away, and the once lavish retreat now felt like a gilded cage. Kirk paced the marble hallway, his phone clutched like a lifeline, muttering half-formed plans that even he could not believe. Rasheeda watched from the balcony above, her arms folded tight, each measured breath a silent warning that she would not be the one to bend first. Downstairs, Yandi leaned against a velvet armchair, pretending calm as her eyes tracked every shadow that moved across the floor. Mendices stood nearby, the veins in his neck stiff with the effort of restraint, while Sierra and Carly whispered in sharp bursts, feeding the room with small sparks of gossip that could ignite a larger fire at any moment. A sudden crash from the catering kitchen broke the standoff, and everyone flinched as if a gun had gone off. The sound of splintering glass echoed through the hall, followed by a voice too frantic to be scripted. It was an assistant, trembling as he stammered that someone had sabotaged the power grid feeding the lower wing. Lights flickered. The power grid feeding the lower wing. Lights flickered, plunging half the estate into a dim amber glow, and the air turned heavy with the scent of burnt wires. Cameras kept rolling while crew members scrambled with flashlights, their beams slicing through the growing dark like nervous thoughts. Instead of retreating, Rasheeda descended the staircase with a slow, deliberate grace that silenced every whispered argument. She stopped in the center of the room, her gaze sweeping across the cast like a cold searchlight, and began to speak. Her words cut through the din with the precision of a blade. She named names, exposed secret texts, and dragged hidden alliances into the open. One by one, the room's players found themselves pinned beneath the weight of their own deceptions. Yandi tried to interject, but Rasheeda raised a hand and the interruption died in her throat. Kirk's face tightened as if he could feel the walls closing in, his earlier bravado dissolving into a restless shuffle. In the corner, Mendices tilted his head, watching the collapse of carefully layered lies with the detached focus of a man who had waited for this reckoning all along. Outside, the ocean pounded against the cliffs, its rhythm merging with the thrum of failing electricity. Lightning flashed across the distant horizon, throwing jagged light across the mansion's glass walls. The storm that had threatened all day finally began to build, a low growl of thunder rolling toward the island like a promise of chaos. Rasheeda's voice rose above the rumble, stronger now, carrying the authority of someone who had been underestimated one time too many. Every accusation landed with the force of proof, each revelation peeling back another layer of pretense until the house felt naked under the weight of truth. Carly clutched Sierra's arm, their eyes wide as they realized the game they thought they controlled was slipping from their grasp. Yandi shifted her stance, searching for a path back to control. But every exit had been sealed by Rasheeda's relentless clarity. Outside the mansion, camera drones buzzed to capture the encroaching storm, their lenses trembling in the gusting wind. Inside, silence fell like a verdict. No one moved, no one spoke. And for a single charged moment, it felt as though the entire production, the cameras, the lights, the endless hunger for spectacle was waiting for Rasheeda to decide what came next. The storm struck in full force, just as the last of Rasheeda's words settled into the heavy silence. And it was as if the island itself had been holding its breath for this final reckoning. Rain hammered the mansion's vast windows in sheets that blurred the ocean beyond into a gray, seething void, while thunder rattled the crystal fixtures until they chimed like haunted bells. Cameras remained fixed on every angle, their tiny red lights winking through the darkness as though the house were under siege by 100 unblinking eyes. No one dared to move at first, the cast suspended in a fragile stillness where every choice carried the weight of permanent consequence. Kirk finally broke, the sound of his voice a hoarse scrape against the storm. He tried to explain himself, weaving half-truths into excuses. But each word only deepened the cracks in the persona he had fought to maintain. Rasheeda listened without flinching, her face set in a calm that was more dangerous than any shout. Yandi, sensing the walls of public opinion closing around her, stepped forward with a sudden burst of defiance, her own confession wrapped in calculated vulnerability. She spoke of pressure, of producers pushing conflict, of choices made in desperation, but her eyes darted nervously to Mendices, as if seeking silent approval. Mendices stayed still, his expression unreadable, the kind of quiet that bends a room toward its center. The crew worked like ghosts, darting in and out with replacement lights and microphones, the storm outside creating a soundtrack of crashing waves and grinding wind that turned every small movement into high drama. Carly seized the chaos to deliver her own revelations, her voice trembling yet fierce as she exposed secret alliances and off-camera betrayals that rewrote the night's timeline. Each sentence sent a ripple through the gathered group, and by the time she finished the air smelled faintly of ozone and panic. Sierra clutched a glass of water that shook with the same nervous rhythm as her heart, torn between loyalty and survival. Rasheeda waited until the flood of confessions had run dry before she spoke again, her words cutting through the storm like a clean blade. She reminded them all of the contracts they had signed, the promises they had made to the audience, and the personal codes they had shattered in pursuit of fleeting fame. Her speech was not a plea but a declaration, A reminder that accountability was not a plot twist but a consequence. Kirk's shoulders sagged under the weight of it, his eyes finally lowering in something like surrender. Yandi stepped back, her earlier fire dimming as the reality of cameras and contracts pressed in on her like a vice. For a long moment, the only sound was the storm. Rain striking the roof in relentless rhythm as if the sky itself demanded a final answer. Then, in a move that stunned even the producers, Rasheeda crossed the room and pulled Yandi into a slow, deliberate embrace. It was not forgiveness so much as recognition. A silent acknowledgement that their shared humanity mattered more than the spectacle that had consumed them. The cameras caught every frame. The storm flashing behind them in white bursts of light that turned the moment into something almost mythic. Mendici stepped forward and placed a steady hand on Kirk's shoulder, a gesture that carried both warning and reluctant respect. One by one, the others followed, forming a loose circle in the center of the grand hall as the storm raged outside. No one declared victory, no one claimed defeat. Instead, the silence filled with a strange, hard-earned understanding that the night had burned away more than lies. It had revealed the fragile truth beneath all the glitter and noise, that each of them, despite the betrayals and the cameras and the endless games of power, still carried a core of dignity that no storm could wash away. The mansion trembled as another thunderclap split the sky. But inside the circle of weary faces, there was a steadiness that defied the chaos. Rasheeda lifted her head and met the eyes of the crew, her voice quiet yet unshakable as she told them to keep rolling. This story, she said, was no longer about ratings or revenge. It was about what came next, about how people broken open by betrayal choose to stand, to speak, and to begin again even as the storm continues to rage. And with that, the cameras held their breath alongside the island as the night carried them into a dawn none of them could yet imagine. The first rays of dawn broke through the remnants of the storm, painting the island in shades of gold and rose that seemed almost surreal after the chaos of the previous night. Inside the villa, the air was thick with exhaustion and tension, but also with an uneasy sense of clarity. Kirk sat slouched in an armchair, his head resting against his palm, eyes bloodshot from the hours of sleepless confrontation. Jasmine moved quietly to the balcony, letting the morning breeze wash over her, though the sharp pang of guilt lingered like a stubborn shadow. Rasheeda, seated at the long dining table, removed her sunglasses fully for the first time since arriving, revealing eyes that were tired yet fierce, alive with a resolve that seemed to radiate into every corner of the room. The crew, hesitant but professional, hovered at a respectful distance, capturing every subtle gesture, every silent pause that might later become headlines or viral clips. Outside, the wind had calmed, leaving only the soft rush of waves lapping at the shore, a sound that could have been calming if not for the weight of what had occurred. Rasheeda finally spoke, her voice firm yet calm, cutting through the morning quiet. "We have to set things straight before the world interprets this any further. Every statement, every interview, every post has to be calculated. We decide the narrative, or someone else will, and I won't let them make us look like fools." Kirk rubbed his face with both hands, nodding slowly. I understand. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." Jasmine, sensing the fragility of the moment, added quietly, "We can't undo what happened, but maybe we can control what comes next." Rasheeda's gaze softened, just slightly. "Control is an illusion, Jasmine, but perception is everything. If we survive the storm publicly, privately we can begin to repair what's left." Outside the villa, staff members moved with quiet urgency, preparing press releases, coordinating with security, and setting up interviews. Social media buzzed even before the first official statements were made. Hashtags that had trended during the confrontation, #Island Showdown, #Team Rasheeda, #Kirk and Jasmine were now flooding feeds with speculation, memes, and endless commentary from fans worldwide. Kirk and Jasmine huddled over a laptop, drafting a carefully worded post to calm the frenzy, while Rasheeda dictated responses in her sharp, precise tone, ensuring that no word could be misinterpreted or twisted. Hours passed in this tense choreography, punctuated only by the occasional gust of wind rattling the open windows and the soft hum of the air conditioning. By mid-afternoon, the statement went live. Fans erupted online, some praising Rasheeda's strength and poise, others analyzing every word for hidden meaning or implication. Kirk and Jasmine watched the notifications with a mix of relief and dread, knowing that the public might forgive the scandal but could never forget it. Rasheeda, meanwhile, stood on the balcony again, arms crossed, looking out at the island that had become both battlefield and refuge. "This is only the beginning," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "We survived the night, but the story doesn't end here. It never does with people like us. Kirk moved to stand beside her, his voice low. Do you really think we can get through this? Rasheeda turned to him, her expression unreadable. We have no choice, but surviving isn't enough. We have to rebuild, carefully, deliberately. And if anyone thinks they can underestimate me again. Her gaze swept the horizon, sharp as a blade, and Kirk understood without words. There would be no second chances. Jasmine joined them, silent but present, as the three of them watched the sun climb higher, each lost in thoughts of accountability, survival, and the uncertain path forward. The cameras captured the moment, the golden morning light framing a tableau of people bound together by betrayal, resilience, and the unspoken understanding that their private storm had now become a public legend. The villa felt quieter, almost hollow, but beneath the silence pulsed the energy of lives forever changed, relationships tested to their limits, and a story that fans would dissect, discuss, and debate for months to come. And though the island looked peaceful under the morning sun, everyone inside knew that the calm was temporary. The storm had passed, but the waves it had stirred would continue to crash against them, relentless and unyielding, as they faced the long road ahead. By late afternoon, the villa had settled into an uneasy rhythm. The cast moved with cautious awareness, each step measured, each word weighed as if the walls themselves might report back to Rasheeda's sharp gaze. Kirk lingered near the open kitchen, absently stirring a cup of coffee, eyes scanning the horizon for signs that the island had returned to serenity. Jasmine sat on the couch, legs crossed, scrolling through the endless notifications on her phone. Every post, every comment seemed like a miniature earthquake, shaking the fragile sense of normalcy they were desperately clinging to. Outside, the sun poured over the ocean in molten gold, glinting off the wet surfaces left by the overnight storm. The island appeared untouched, serene almost, yet the mansion pulsed with tension, the kind that didn't vanish with daylight. Rasheeda moved through the rooms with purposeful precision, checking on cameras, reviewing social media responses, and recalibrating statements to ensure that every word reflected authority and composure. Every so often, she paused, listening to the hum of the wind or the distant call of seabirds, as if drawing strength from the natural world that had witnessed their chaos. Kirk finally approached, his voice tentative. Rasheeda, we need to talk about the kids. They saw the messages, the posts. They're confused, scared. Rasheeda's eyes softened, just slightly. I know we'll handle them together. But first, the adults need to manage the fallout. If we present a united front, the kids will feel safer. If we fracture now, they'll carry this longer than anyone realizes. Jasmine's fingers froze over her phone. Do you really think they'll forgive us? After everything, Rasheeda's gaze met hers, piercing but not unkind. Forgiveness isn't guaranteed. Understanding is earned. And right now, we need to earn it by showing that we can take responsibility. That's the only way forward. Just then, the villa's main door opened, and a photographer from a rival network slipped in unnoticed. Cameras flashed. Security moved swiftly, but the interruptions sent ripples through the tensioned air, reminding everyone that the world outside remained ever watchful, hungry for drama, eager for a misstep. Rasheeda's voice cut through the commotion. Not today. You're leaving. The photographer hesitated, but a firm glare from her, combined with security's presence, made the decision easy. He left, muttering under his breath, leaving the mansion to its uneasy peace. Night approached, the sky a canvas of dark indigo streaked with violet, and the islands seemed to exhale after a long, tense day. Inside, the family gathered in the main living room, a tentative truce forming not from warmth but necessity. Conversations were careful, polite, measured, each word carrying the weight of survival and the unspoken acknowledgement of last night's chaos. Kirk finally broke the silence, his voice low and sincere. We can't undo the past, but maybe we can move forward, carefully, together. Rasheeda's gaze swept the room, taking in Jasmine, Yandi, Mendices, Carly, and Sierra. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means facing reality, admitting mistakes, and acting with integrity. From here, everything we do matters more than what we did before. Jasmine nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Then let's start. Carefully. Outside, the ocean glimmered under the rising moon, casting silver light over the palm trees and reflecting off the wet stone paths. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. The island had witnessed their conflict, their confrontation, their exposure, and now, in the quiet, after the chaos, it bore silent testimony to the resilience of those willing to face their consequences. Kirk, Jasmine, and Rasheeda sat together in quiet reflection, the hum of cameras blending with the night sounds of the island. They had survived the storm, both literal and emotional, but the journey ahead would test every measure of patience, trust, and forgiveness. And as the night deepened, the faint sound of waves continued their relentless rhythm. A reminder that life, like the ocean, moves forward regardless of the tempests it carries within. Morning arrived slowly, painting the villa in soft, muted shades of pink and orange, a stark contrast to the chaos that had overtaken the island the night before. The air was heavy with humidity, but also with anticipation, an unspoken understanding that today would not be ordinary. Kirk stirred awake first, lingering in the quiet of the early hours, listening to the distant waves crash against the cliffs, a rhythmic reminder of both the beauty and the unpredictability surrounding them. Jasmine joined him on the balcony, clutching a cup of coffee, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted by the previous night's revelations. Neither spoke immediately, each lost in thought, the gravity of Rasheeda's presence and words from yesterday still settling into their bones. Inside the villa, Rasheeda moved with the precision of someone who had rehearsed every step in her mind. Her phone buzzed constantly with updates, trending hashtags, fan reactions, and producer inquiries. She scanned each message carefully, filtering emotion from strategy, ensuring that her next move would cement control over the narrative rather than allow it to slip into chaos. Despite the calculated demeanor, there was a trace of fatigue beneath her poised exterior, reminder that even the strongest players were vulnerable when confronted with a storm of their own making. By mid-morning, the rest of the cast had gathered in the main room, the atmosphere tense but professional. Yandi and Mendices exchanged cautious glances, Carly and Sierra whispered in tight circles, and even the production crew moved with a subtle urgency, capturing reactions without intruding on the simmering energy that filled the space. Rasheeda called the following morning dawned with an eerie stillness. The storm's aftermath had left the island both pristine and charged, as though the environment itself mirrored the tension that lingered inside the villa. The cast moved cautiously, each footstep echoing across the marble floors, the air heavy with unspoken questions. Kirk lingered near the balcony, coffee in hand, staring out at the water as if seeking an answer from the waves. Jasmine followed quietly, her fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled through the overnight social media storm. Every post, every comment, every fan reaction served as a reminder that their private lives had become public spectacle, dissected, debated, and sensationalized with the speed only a digital audience could provide. Rasheeda, standing in the Great Hall, had already begun coordinating with the production team, her presence commanding even as the exhaustion of the night weighed on her. She spoke into a headset, dictating instructions for follow-ups, interviews, and controlled releases to ensure that the narrative remained in her hands. Each word she spoke was deliberate, each movement measured. The calm authority she exuded contrasted sharply with the chaos she had navigated just hours before. Kirk finally approached her, voice quiet, almost pleading. "Rasheeda, we need to talk about what comes next. Not just the fans, not just the show. The kids. They're asking questions, trying to understand what they saw." Rasheeda's gaze softened briefly, revealing the tenderness she often masked beneath her fierce exterior. "I know, but first, the adults must manage the aftermath. If we crumble now, the kids will see the chaos as permanent. We survive publicly so they can heal privately." Jasmine interjected, anxiety threading her tone. "Do you really think people will forgive us? After everything?" Rasheeda turned toward her fully, eyes steady and unwavering. "Forgiveness isn't guaranteed. Understanding is, and understanding is what we must earn through honesty, accountability, and the courage to face the consequences. That is the only path forward." The sound of a distant engine caused everyone in the room to glance toward the entrance. A helicopter hovered briefly above the property, the downdraft rattling the shutters and sending papers flying from the table. Fans had gathered along the island's cliff edges, their phones raised like beacons to capture every moment. Rasheeda moved to the balcony, raising a hand to signal calm. "Not today," she said quietly, though the firmness in her tone left no room for argument. The helicopter adjusted its course, circling before retreating, a symbolic reminder that their lives were now under constant surveillance. As the day progressed, tensions simmered beneath polite conversation. Yandi leaned against the wall, exchanging whispered comments with Mendices, who remained stoic, his focus unwavering. Carly and Sierra discussed what they had witnessed with a mixture of awe and fear, their conversations laden with half-truths and assumptions that only added to the underlying storm. Every movement, every glance, every hesitant step felt like a carefully choreographed dance, where one misstep could ignite a new round of conflict. By mid-afternoon, the first interviews were conducted. Producers and camera crews had set up outside, and the cast gave statements in a controlled, almost ceremonial manner. Rasheeda's words were precise, measured, yet powerful, conveying strength and accountability simultaneously. Kirk's statements were careful, tinged with regret, but lacking the edge Rasheeda carried effortlessly. Jasmine's voice quivered at first, but gained steadiness as she acknowledged her mistakes publicly. Each sentence a small step toward redemption. Outside, fans shared reactions in real time, some praising Rasheeda's leadership, others expressing sympathy for Kirk and Jasmine, and yet others questioning whether the reconciliation was genuine or a strategic performance. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the island took on a golden hue that contrasted sharply with the turbulence that had consumed it. Rasheeda gathered the group in the villa's great hall once more, her presence a stabilizing force. "This is a pivotal moment," she began, her voice steady and unwavering. "We have survived the storm, but survival is not the same as resolution. We must act with integrity, with transparency, and with the knowledge that our choices will echo far beyond this island." Kirk, Jasmine, Yandy, Mendices, Carly, and Sierra listened intently, absorbing her words like a lifeline amid the turbulent sea of public scrutiny. That night, as darkness enveloped the island once more, the group convened for a final meeting before the cameras went off air. Rasheeda outlined a careful plan to address media, fans, and family, each step deliberate, each instruction precise. The storm's memory lingered in the form of residual anxiety and cautious glances. But under Rasheeda's guidance, a fragile cohesion emerged. The villa, once a stage for confrontation, had become a crucible for clarity. The hours stretched into a quiet, introspective night. The cast moved through the villa with cautious grace, attending to private calls, sending messages to family, and taking moments to breathe. The ocean outside mirrored the subtle movements within, waves lapping softly, carrying the memory of chaos yet hinting at the possibility of calm. Rasheeda, alone on the balcony for a long moment, exhaled slowly, allowing herself a rare release of tension. The wind whispered against her skin, carrying salt and memory, a reminder of both the power and fragility of the lives they had chosen to lead publicly. In the following days, the villa began to hum with routine once more, though the undercurrents of tension persisted. Every interaction was informed by what had transpired, every glance layered with meaning. Social media continued to amplify the saga, but now under a lens carefully curated by Rasheeda and the production team. Fans debated endlessly, dissecting the statements, analyzing body language, and drawing their own conclusions. The narrative was no longer spontaneous chaos, it was strategy, measured and precise, guided by the unshakable presence of the woman who had orchestrated the storm and its aftermath with calculated brilliance. And yet, even in the controlled environment, the cracks of human emotion remained. Kirk wrestled with guilt, Jasmine sought validation, and even the previously unshakable Mendices found himself reflecting on the fragility of public trust. Rasheeda observed quietly, understanding that power was not just in commanding words or actions but in navigating the complex web of relationships and perception. Night fell again, casting shadows across the villa's marble floors and gilded walls. The storm was gone, but its lessons lingered like an indelible mark on each of them. Rasheeda stood once more on the balcony, looking out at the ocean that had witnessed everything, from whispered betrayals to explosive confrontations. She understood now, more than ever, that survival in their world required not just resilience, but foresight, precision, and the courage to confront truths that others would rather hide. Inside, the group gathered quietly for dinner, their conversation careful, yet tinged with a tentative sense of reconciliation. Each person carried the memory of the island's chaos, yet beneath the tension lay a fragile hope that, together, they could navigate the storm's aftermath without being consumed by it. And as the night deepened, the island remained silent save for the gentle lap of waves against the shore, a haunting yet beautiful reminder that life, like the ocean, moves relentlessly forward, carrying both memory and the promise of renewal. The villa, once a theater of betrayal, now stood as a testament to endurance, reflection, and the hard-won understanding that even amidst public spectacle, private strength and accountability remain the ultimate currency. The following morning arrived with a fragile calm, the island bathed in soft sunlight that glinted off the water like a mirror, concealing nothing but revealing everything. Kirk sat on the edge of the villa's terrace, staring at the endless horizon, the gentle lap of the waves doing little to soothe the turbulence still roiling inside him. Every moment of the previous days played on a loop in his mind, the confrontations, the confessions, Rasheeda's unwavering gaze, and the relentless scrutiny of cameras that had captured it all. Jasmine joined him quietly, the space between them thick with unspoken remorse and tentative curiosity about what came next. Neither spoke at first, listening instead to the natural rhythm of the island, the way the palms swayed with the breeze, and how the birds had returned to their early morning chorus. As if life insisted on continuing, despite the chaos. Rasheeda, meanwhile, had moved to the villa's library, a sanctuary she claimed as her own during crises. She reviewed the footage from the cameras, every angle meticulously noted, every subtle expression analyzed. Her fingers tapped rhythmically on the table as she pieced together the narrative that would be presented to the world, a narrative of strength, accountability, and control. Even as she worked, her mind wandered over the private conversations of the night before, the whispered confessions, and the moments of near breakdown that had revealed both weakness and resilience in equal measure. Kirk cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Do you think we can really make people understand that it wasn't all lies, that there was care?" Jasmine's response was quiet, almost a whisper. "They'll understand what they want to understand. We can only be truthful and hope it reaches them." Kirk nodded, a faint weight lifting from his shoulders as he realized that the only control they truly had was over their own words and actions. By late morning, the villa had transformed into a controlled theater. The crew set up cameras in strategic locations, ensuring that interviews would capture sincerity without losing the dramatic tension that had become part of the saga. Yandi moved through the rooms, carefully scripting her statements, while Mendices observed silently. His presence a grounding force that reminded everyone that accountability was more than a performance, it was an obligation. Carly and Sierra practiced their lines, conscious of how every syllable could shape public perception, aware that the smallest gesture or inflection might ignite speculation or fan outrage. The first round of interviews commenced just after noon. Rasheeda, standing with her back straight and voice steady, set the tone. Her words carried weight, commanding attention, not through aggression but through the clarity and precision of her delivery. She acknowledged the events of the past days without sensationalizing them, owning her part in the decisions made while holding Kirk and Jasmine accountable. Kirk's responses were hesitant at first, tinged with genuine remorse and the occasional lapse into defensive justification. Jasmine's words wavered initially but gained strength as she allowed vulnerability to show, each admission a small bridge toward redemption. Outside, the island remained deceptively serene, the morning sun casting golden light across the still wet sand, reflecting the contrast between the natural calm and the storm of human emotion contained within the villa. Drones hovered discreetly, capturing aerial shots that would later be used to frame the narrative for audiences, emphasizing both the isolation and intimacy of the confrontation that had taken place. By mid-afternoon, tension began to give way to a tentative rhythm. The cast and crew moved through their spaces with measured calm, occasionally pausing to review footage, adjust statements, or practice careful gestures for upcoming segments. Kirk and Jasmine found themselves in private conversation again, their words more candid, less performative. "We've survived the worst of it," Jasmine said quietly, "but the hardest part is living with ourselves after." Kirk reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with a familiarity born of shared crisis. "We rebuild slowly, one step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, people will see that we're trying, not pretending." As dusk approached, the villa's great hall was filled with soft light, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Rasheeda gathered the group for a final strategy session before the night's recordings began. Her voice was calm, almost tender, yet carried an unmistakable authority. "This is not about who was right or wrong," she said. "It's about how we move forward, how we present ourselves, and how we maintain integrity in the face of scrutiny. The world is watching, but they cannot dictate our actions. That power remains ours." The evening progressed with a series of tightly coordinated interviews and interactions, each capturing subtle expressions, controlled gestures, and the careful navigation of emotion. The cast's energy shifted from defensive to reflective, their movements slower, more deliberate, aware that every camera angle could become a story and every word a headline. Outside, the moon rose over the ocean, casting silver light that glinted across the wet surfaces and added a surreal calm to the villa's otherwise charged atmosphere. Late into the night, Kirk and Jasmine found themselves alone on the terrace once more, the distant roar of waves mingling with the rustle of palm leaves. "Do you think she'll forgive us?" Jasmine asked softly, her voice barely above the whisper of wind. Kirk considered, then shook his head slightly. "I don't know, but she doesn't owe forgiveness. What matters is that we're honest, and we try to do better. That's all we can control." Meanwhile, Rasheeda stood silently in the library, reviewing every interaction, every expression, every captured moment. Her mind ran through contingencies, possible public reactions, and the long-term strategy for handling the fallout. She understood that power was not in avoiding mistakes but in controlling the narrative once they occurred, in guiding perception without forcing it, in remaining the unwavering center of the storm even when chaos threatened to pull everything apart. By midnight, the villa had quieted. The storm had long since passed, leaving only the subtle hum of the ocean and the gentle rustle of leaves. Inside, the cast reflected on the events that had upended their lives, the private confessions that had become public spectacle, and the delicate path forward that required honesty, patience, and courage. The island had witnessed betrayal, confrontation, and revelation, yet it also bore witness to resilience, reflection, and the first tentative steps toward reconciliation. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the horizon once more, Rasheeda stood on the balcony, looking out over the ocean. She understood that survival was only the beginning. What lay ahead was more challenging: rebuilding trust, navigating public perception, and maintaining personal integrity in a world that demanded both spectacle and truth. The villa, now quiet, reflected the journey that each of them had begun, a journey not toward forgiveness alone, but toward understanding, accountability, and the unyielding knowledge that every choice, every word, every action carried consequences that would ripple far beyond the isolated island they called home. And so, the night faded into morning, the island serene, yet charged with the memories of the storm and the unspoken understanding that life would never return to the simplicity it once had. Each member of the cast stood at the precipice of change, aware that the coming days would demand courage, honesty, and a willingness to face both themselves and the relentless gaze of the world outside. The villa, bathed in early sunlight, stood as both a witness and a crucible, a place where reckoning had been faced, truths revealed, and the first glimmers of a fragile reconciliation had begun to emerge. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long golden rays across the villa's expansive terraces and sparkling pool. Yet inside, the atmosphere remained charged. The events of the past days had left an indelible mark on every person present, each step forward laced with tension, reflection, and the uneasy awareness that nothing could return to how it had been. Kirk moved through the hallways slowly, avoiding cameras at first, yet acutely conscious of the silent scrutiny that seemed to linger in every corner. His thoughts spiraled between remorse, strategic concern, and the gnawing fear that fans and critics alike would never forgive the missteps that had unfolded before the cameras. Jasmine, sensing his unease, walked alongside him. "We can't control what everyone else thinks," she said softly, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of anxiety. "We can only control how we respond, how we move forward." Rasheeda, already awake and methodical as ever, had claimed her position at the villa's central workstation. Surrounded by monitors and devices, she meticulously reviewed overnight reactions across social media, fan forums, and news outlets. Every post, every video clip, every meme was analyzed for potential impact, for subtle undertones, for opportunities to shift narrative control back into her hands. Her brow furrowed as she noted the recurring themes: respect for her unwavering stance, admiration for her composure, and a grudging acknowledgement from some fans that she had outmaneuvered even the most calculated drama. She allowed herself no only the precise clarity of knowing the next steps would determine not only public perception but the private cohesion of the group she had guided through chaos. By mid-morning, the villa had transitioned into a controlled setting of rehearsals, interviews, and reflective conversations. Kirk was seated in a quiet corner, recording statements for social media, each word carefully chosen, each pause measured. Jasmine practiced alongside him, emphasizing sincerity without admitting to dramatics that could be twisted by media outlets. Yandi, still cautious yet assertive, rehearsed her own statements with Mendici, the two navigating their shared history and strategic image in tandem. Carly and Sierra worked on subtle expressions and posture, each aware that visual cues could alter interpretation just as much as spoken words. Outside, the island itself seemed to hold its breath, the earlier storm replaced by calm seas and gentle breezes, yet the underlying tension within the villa mirrored the restless movement of the waves, the surface serene, the currents underneath powerful and unpredictable. Drones circled quietly, capturing aerial views of the sprawling estate, providing context for fans, yet reminding the cast that they remained under the persistent gaze of the outside world. By noon, Rasheeda convened a strategy session. "We need to think beyond the immediate," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs and rustling papers. "This is not just about what happened here, in this villa. It's about perception, narrative control, and maintaining integrity when every move is scrutinized. We must be proactive, not reactive. Kirk leaned forward, a hint of tension in his posture. Proactive means we acknowledge mistakes without letting people think we're weak. Rasheeda's gaze was sharp. Exactly. Weakness is exploited. Strength is measured by accountability and the ability to act deliberately in the aftermath. We survived the chaos. Now we must survive the scrutiny. The afternoon unfolded in a careful choreography. Interviews were filmed, live reactions monitored, and statements reviewed multiple times for tone, consistency, and impact. Rasheeda's presence remained central, not just directing the narrative but observing subtle shifts in the group dynamics. Every interaction between Kirk and Jasmine, every nod from Yundi, every side glance from Carly and Sierra was noted, assessed, and incorporated into the broader strategy. The air within the villa was thick with anticipation, as if everyone understood that the eyes of the world were watching, not just for drama, but for authenticity, resilience, and the rare moments of genuine emotion that could turn controversy into respect. Even as the cameras captured carefully staged moments, private conversations persisted. Kirk and Jasmine discussed their personal lessons, their regrets, and the emotional toll of public exposure. "I didn't expect it to get this intense," Jasmine admitted quietly. Not just the confrontation, but the feeling that every mistake is amplified tenfold. Kirk nodded, swallowing hard. "It's not just about us anymore. Every choice we make is magnified. But I think if we stay honest, really honest, we can weather it, and maybe even grow." Meanwhile, Rasheeda reviewed the footage again, noting the subtleties in expressions, the shifts in tone, and the small gestures that could be leveraged to maintain credibility. She understood that influence was rarely about overt action. It was about subtle control, about guiding perception without appearing to force it. Her mind worked rapidly, anticipating questions from media, potential critiques from fans, and even the emotional fallout within the villa itself. As evening approached, a sudden incident broke the tentative calm. One of the crew members accidentally triggered a false fire alarm, sending the group into immediate alert. Panic flared briefly, hearts racing, but Rasheeda's swift command restored order within moments. The incident, though minor, underscored the fragility of the environment. They were still living on a knife edge where small disturbances could trigger major reactions. Dinner was tense but measured. The group sat around the long table, each person aware of the camera placements and potential implications of every expression, every glance. Conversations were cautious, polite, yet loaded with subtle acknowledgement of shared experience. Kirk raised a glass quietly. "To surviving, and hopefully learning." Rasheeda inclined her head. "To accountability, to reflection, and to the knowledge that we are stronger for facing what we feared." Jasmine added softly, "And to honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." The night stretched on with reflective silence punctuated by careful conversation. Outside, the island lay under a blanket of stars, the ocean shimmering silver as if mocking the turbulent human drama it had witnessed. Inside, the cast moved with newfound awareness, balancing public image with private reckoning. Aware that every word and gesture could become a permanent record in the court of fan opinion. Hours later, Kirk and Jasmine walked the villa's terrace in quiet contemplation. "Do you think it's enough?" Jasmine asked, the night wind tugging gently at her hair. "Enough for who?" Kirk responded, a faint smile tinged with exhaustion. "For the world, for us, for her." They spoke of Rasheeda, of the influence she wielded, of the lessons they had learned about respect, control, and accountability. The silence between them was not emptied, was weighted with understanding. The knowledge that their path forward required both humility and courage. Rasheeda, standing alone in the library once more, reviewed the final statements before morning. She reflected on the storm's events, the confrontations, and the emotional toll on everyone involved. She knew the path forward would be difficult, public scrutiny was relentless, but her confidence remained unshaken. Control was not about eliminating conflict. It was about navigating it with precision and integrity. As the night faded into early morning, the villa was quiet, each person lost in thought, processing lessons learned, personal failings, and the reality of their newfound visibility. The island, now calm and serene, bore silent witness to the journey from chaos to clarity. From conflict to tentative resolution, the cast had endured storms, both literal and metaphorical, faced the magnifying lens of public scrutiny, and emerged with a fragile understanding of themselves and each other. And so, as dawn approached once again, the villa stood as a symbol of survival, reflection, and the delicate balance between public image and private truth. The waves lapped gently at the shore, the palm trees swayed softly, and the island seemed to breathe along with its inhabitants. Each person, in their own way, recognized that the events that had transpired would shape them permanently, guiding decisions, relationships, and perceptions for the days, months, and years to come. The storm had passed, but the memory, the lessons, and the lingering tension remained, woven into the fabric of every interaction, every glance, and every decision yet to be made. The next day arrived with a brittle calm, the sunlight sharp across the island yet offering no warmth to the lingering tension inside the villa. The previous night's reflections had left subtle shifts in every relationship's untentative, others still fragile, but all irrevocably altered. Kirk moved through the hallways with a measured slowness, aware that every movement could be captured, analyzed, and interpreted by an audience watching from thousands of miles away. Jasmine followed closely, her presence quiet but significant, a silent support as both of them navigated the aftershocks of public exposure. Rasheeda, once again in her command position at the villa's central hub, reviewed footage, social media reactions, and internal group dynamics. Her mind was an intricate map of contingencies, each scenario layered with potential outcomes, each interaction with friends, family, and fans carefully plotted. Her authority was subtle yet absolute, a blend of strategic intelligence and emotional awareness honed from years of navigating public scrutiny and personal conflict simultaneously. Every statement, every gesture, every calculated pause was part of a larger plan, a narrative that she controlled, not through force, but through presence and precision. By mid-morning, the group convened in the main hall for a strategy session focused on the unfolding media storm. "We've weathered the initial impact," Rasheeda said, her voice cutting through the subdued chatter. "But the story doesn't stop here. Fans will dissect every interview, every post, and every expression. We need to stay ahead of speculation, maintain credibility, and most importantly, protect each other." Kirk nodded, a sense of weight settling on his shoulders. "We have to be honest, but strategic," he murmured. Jasmine added quietly, "We can't just defend ourselves, we have to show growth, understanding, and care." Rasheeda's gaze softened just slightly, acknowledging the sincerity in their words while keeping the focus on action. The day was a careful orchestration of interviews, rehearsed statements, and monitored interactions. Yandi and Mendices engaged with the production team, rehearsing responses and analyzing the emotional impact of their gestures and tone. Carly and Sierra were coached on subtle facial expressions, posture, and conversational pacing, ensuring that their body language aligned with the intended narrative. Each move, each line, each pause was choreographed to convey authenticity while controlling the message being received by an attentive, often judgmental audience. Outside, the island appeared idyllic, the waves glinting silver under the high sun, a deceptive contrast to the turbulence within the villa. Drones captured panoramic shots for social media and promotional materials, framing the narrative in a visual style that suggested harmony and luxury. Even as the private reality remained charged with tension, the crew moved with careful precision, aware that even a misplaced camera angle or poorly timed sound could distort the story being told. By afternoon, the villa became a theater of private confrontations and reconciliations. Kirk and Jasmine found a quiet corner, their conversation raw and unfiltered. "It's exhausting," Jasmine admitted, her eyes glistening, "not just the drama, but knowing that everything we do will be judged." Kirk reached for her hand, the gesture small but grounding. "I know, but maybe that's the point. We're forced to be accountable, to reflect, to change. That's maybe what redemption feels like." Their brief moment of intimacy was observed indirectly by cameras positioned to capture genuine emotion, yet unintrusively, blending narrative with reality. Meanwhile, Rasheeda orchestrated the final set of statements and interviews. She addressed the camera with authority, her words deliberate, conveying strength without arrogance. She acknowledged the storm, the mistakes, and the emotions involved, emphasizing accountability, reflection, and a commitment to growth. Fans across social media reacted instantly, some praising her poise and control, others dissecting every subtle gesture for hidden meaning. The villa had transformed into a crucible of narrative mastery, balancing personal authenticity with strategic presentation. As evening approached, the group gathered on the villa's terrace, the sunset casting deep oranges and purples across the horizon. Rasheeda addressed the cast privately before the cameras went off air. "Tonight is about closure, reflection, and preparation for the days ahead. We've faced our public storm. Now we face our private one. How we handle it internally will define us far longer than headlines ever could." Kirk, Jasmine, Yandi, Mendices, Carly, and Sierra absorbed her words in silence, each processing the layers of accountability, consequence, and cautious hope embedded within them. Dinner was served quietly, each person mindful of both physical and emotional space. Conversations were careful but honest, allowing for moments of shared laughter, acknowledgement of mistakes, and tentative reconciliation. The cameras recorded, but the emphasis shifted from spectacle to subtle, authentic emotion, a balancing act of public perception and private sincerity. The group's energy, though subdued, had evolved from tension and fear to cautious optimism, an understanding that while the storm had passed, the process of recovery was ongoing and deeply personal. Later that night, Kirk and Jasmine walked along the terrace again, the moonlight reflecting off the ocean's gentle ripples. "Do you think she ever truly forgive us?" Jasmine asked softly. Kirk exhaled slowly, considering, "Maybe not fully, but it's not just about forgiveness, it's about respect, understanding, and accountability. That's what we can give, and maybe that's enough." Rasheeda, observing from a distance, recognized the shift in dynamic. She had navigated them through conflict, controlled the narrative, and now watched as private resolutions began to take shape organically. The night deepened, and the villa's rooms fell into a quiet rhythm. Some retreated to private reflection, others engaged in subdued conversation. The storm's aftermath had transformed the cast, relationships had been tested, personal strengths and vulnerabilities revealed, and the understanding of public scrutiny internalized. The island, serene in appearance, bore witness to every subtle moment, every gesture, every word, a silent observer of human complexity and resilience. By dawn, the villa exuded a calm that was hard-won, a quiet testament to the days of confrontation, reflection, and controlled narrative management. The cast stood on terraces, balconies, and in rooms, contemplating the journey they had endured. The storm had left scars, both visible and invisible, but it had also carved out space for understanding, accountability, and the tentative beginnings of reconciliation. The ocean outside reflected the early light, its waves steady and relentless, mirroring the ongoing journey of the cast. Rasheeda, once again on the balcony, absorbed the scene. She understood that their lives, though permanently altered, were moving forward, shaped by their choices, actions, and the way they had navigated both public scrutiny and private reconciliation. Kirk, Jasmine, Yandi, Mendeces, Carly, and Sierra all shared the understanding that the events on the island had been transformative, not just for the cameras, the audience, or the social media buzz, but for themselves. As the day began in earnest, the villa became a place of measured action, reflection, and preparation. Each interaction, whether casual or formal, carried the weight of lessons learned. Every glance, gesture, and word was imbued with new understanding, each choice deliberate and intentional. TheIsland.com and Beautiful bore silent witness to their journey, capturing the evolution of relationships, the exercise of accountability, and the quiet power of resilience. By late afternoon, subtle shifts were evident. Kirk and Jasmine moved with increased confidence, their interactions more grounded, less reactive. Yandi and Mendeces engaged in collaborative decision-making, their unity reinforcing the group's stability. Carly and Sierra, once tentative, displayed poise and awareness, their actions reflecting both personal growth and strategic comprehension. Rasheeda's presence remained the cornerstone, guiding the group with authority, insight, and emotional intelligence that balanced both narrative control and authentic leadership. As evening descended, the villa's terraces glowed with the warm light of strategically placed lanterns. Conversations flowed with cautious optimism, humor threading through acknowledgement of past mistakes. The storm, once a symbol of chaos and conflict, now served as a catalyst for reflection and resilience. The group had endured scrutiny, confrontation, and emotional upheaval, emerging with a nuanced understanding of responsibility, perception, and interpersonal dynamics. By nightfall, the villa exuded tranquility, a stark contrast to the turbulence that had defined previous days. The ocean whispered along the shore, the palm trees swayed gently, and the stars reflected the quiet energy of a cast transformed. Every individual had faced personal and collective challenges, navigated the relentless gaze of an audience, and emerged with newfound clarity. The island had been both witness and participant, shaping events, responses, and growth through its silent presence. As the final hours of the night approached, Rasheeda gathered the group once more. "The storm is behind us," she said, voice steady yet reflective, "but its lessons remain. What we've endured will shape how we act, how we communicate, and how we move forward, not just on this island, but everywhere. Let this be a reminder: accountability is powerful, integrity is rare, and resilience is earned." The cast absorbed her words in silence, the weight of experience settling into a quiet understanding. They had confronted chaos, navigated scrutiny, and emerged with lessons etched deeply into their awareness. Outside, the waves continued their rhythmic dance, a symbol of continuity, persistence, and the relentless flow of life that, like their own experiences, could not be undone but could be understood, embraced, and integrated into a new path forward. As the sun rose over the private island, casting golden light across the sand and water, the cast of characters stood on the terraces. Reflecting on everything that had transpired, the past days had been a whirlwind of emotion, confrontation, and revelation, each moment carrying weight far beyond the physical space of the villa. Kirk, Jasmine, Rasheeda, Yandi, Mendices, Carly, and Sierra had faced personal and collective storms that tested loyalty, resilience, and the very core of their relationships. Fans watching from across the world had witnessed a drama that was equal parts chaos and reflection, spectacle and sincerity. And now the final chapter on this island seemed to hover on the edge of possibility, unresolved yet profound. Every glance between Kirk and Jasmine spoke volumes: remorse, understanding, and a fragile hope that what had been broken could begin to mend. Rasheeda's presence, ever strong and composed, had guided them through the storm, balancing accountability with compassion, authority with wisdom. Even as tensions had flared, emotions had run high, and conflicts had erupted, there was a sense that growth had emerged from the chaos. The villa, once a battleground of accusations and confrontations, had become a place of reflection and subtle reconciliation, its very walls bearing witness to the intense human drama that had unfolded within. Fans were shocked, inspired, confused, and enthralled by every twist and turn. Social media had exploded with reactions, debates, and theories. Some celebrated Rasheeda's unwavering stance, admiring her strategic mind and emotional fortitude. Others sympathized with Kirk and Jasmine, understanding that behind every headline, every clip, and every dramatic confrontation, there were real human emotions, flawed decisions, and the struggle to navigate them under the relentless gaze of the world. Every comment, post, and share amplified the intensity, reminding the cast that public scrutiny had become an unavoidable part of their lives, a test not just of character, but of resilience, authenticity, and the ability to grow from conflict. As you, the viewer, watch this story unfold, you are not just witnessing entertainment, you are part of a narrative that explores accountability, relationships, and the delicate dance between private choices and public perception. Each decision made by the cast, every emotional confession, and each calculated response carries meaning far beyond the island. You see how trust can be shattered, how conflicts ignite and escalate, and yet how reflection, communication, and honesty can begin to rebuild bridges thought broken forever. This is more than drama. It is a window into human nature under pressure, magnified by circumstance, captured in vivid, unrelenting detail for the world to see. And yet, questions linger. Will Kirk and Jasmine truly regain the trust they have strained? Can Rasheeda maintain the balance between authority and compassion in the face of further scrutiny? Will the bonds between friends, family, and colleagues strengthen or fracture under the pressure of public attention and private emotion? These unresolved tensions, these lingering uncertainties, are what make the story both captivating and relatable, because at the heart of every conflict, every argument, and every revelation lies a simple truth: life is unpredictable, emotions are complex, and growth often comes wrapped in turmoil. Now, it's your turn to engage. What do you think of Rasheeda's approach to the storm? Her control of narrative, and her ability to guide the group through chaos? Do you sympathize with Kirk and Jasmine, understanding their struggles under the spotlight? Or do you think the consequences they faced were necessary? How do you interpret the subtle interactions between each character, the private reconciliations, and the moments of vulnerability that were captured for all to see? Your perspective matters, because in this story, the audience is not just a spectator, they are part of the conversation, part of the analysis, and part of the ongoing narrative that extends beyond the island. If you found yourself drawn into the drama, captivated by the conflicts, or inspired by the resilience shown by the cast, now is the perfect time to act. Like this video to show your support and let us know that you appreciate the depth, tension, and emotional complexity of this saga. Hit subscribe to stay up to date with every development, every twist, and every behind-the-scenes revelation that continues to unfold in this ongoing story. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of drama, reflection, or the powerful lessons that emerge when conflict, emotion, and human nature collide under the unrelenting gaze of both cameras and audience. And most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which moment shocked you the most, Which reaction felt most authentic? And which interaction left you questioning the dynamics of accountability, trust, and loyalty? Your voice adds depth to the narrative, turning a story captured on screen into a dialogue that spans beyond the confines of the villa, beyond the boundaries of the island, and into the world where every fan's opinion contributes to the larger understanding of human behavior under pressure. Remember, this story is more than entertainment, it is a study of emotional resilience, the consequences of choices, and the complex interplay between public perception and private reality. As you watch, consider what you would do in their place, how you would navigate similar storms, and how relationships tested under pressure can transform, break, or rebuild in ways that are unexpected yet profoundly human. This is the power of narrative drama. It allows you to see yourself in the struggles of others, to reflect on the choices you might make, and to engage with a story that continues to evolve even after the cameras are off. So, take a moment now to engage, like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts, reactions, and insights. Become part of the conversation, part of the analysis, and part of the ongoing drama that continues to captivate fans around the world. Every click, every share, and every comment contributes to the story, shaping perception, fueling discussion, and ensuring that the saga of this private island trip, the conflicts, reconciliations, and emotional revelations, will remain alive in the minds and hearts of viewers everywhere. The island may be quiet now, the waves lapping gently against the shore, and the villa bathed in the calm of early morning light, but the echoes of emotion, drama, and human complexity will resonate far beyond these shores. And you, the viewer, are invited to witness, participate, and reflect. Stay engaged, stay expressive, and never underestimate the power of dialogue, discussion, and the shared experience of following a story that blends reality, emotion, and entertainment in a way that is unforgettable, intense, and deeply human. Intense and deeply human.